New polling shows most Republicans still support Donald Trump's campaign, despite his mounting legal troubles.
Can we just stop right there? Can we just stop right there?
There's a lot of reasons for that. We can go into them.
Can we just stop right there for a second? They still support him, Reverend Al, despite the fact this is a guy who said he wanted to terminate the Constitution. This is a guy who denied the election, was the first president, actually, since the Civil War, did not allow a peaceful transfer of power. A guy who actually supported the overthrow of the election results, spurred on an insurrection against the United States of America. All of these riots, people in jail because of Donald Trump, and Republicans are, that's fine. That's fine. You know, it reminds me, back in 2016, John Meacham said that Donald Trump was like a hijacker that got on a plane, of the Republican Party in this case, and everybody that was, all the passengers on the plane were cheering for the hijacker. They still are, despite the fact he took the plane down in 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 21, 20. We're going to show polls too, Reverend Al, that says that yeah, people aren't excited about Joe Biden. People aren't excited about Donald Trump. But if you match Biden against a generic Republican, the generic Republican wins easily. But if you compare Biden to Donald Trump, it's Biden. Trump's approval ratings lower than Biden's. And yet they just keep wanting to lose, these Republicans.
You're exactly right. But I think we must remember the rise of Donald Trump was as a grievance candidate, that they are after us. They look down on us. They do not hear us. They are trying to destroy our families. And never really defining who they were, because he was closer to the established order than any of the people that he was appealing to. So now he has convinced them that they are prosecuting me because I am one of you. And it's his next step in grievance politics. The question is, does a DeSantis or someone have enough of a charisma, appeal, or political savvy to counter that with another narrative? We keep hearing the DeSantis and others coming out, but they've not developed a narrative that the public, in terms of the Republican public, buy into. They bought into grievance politics with Trump. No one has come up with an alternative narrative.
And you know, Morgan, it is so fascinating. Republicans, these Trump Republicans, they love this whole, they're after us. They're coming after our whale. They are? They're after us? They're not the ones that are making 10-year-old girls who have been raped flee the state of Ohio to not have a forced birth in the state of Ohio. They're not the ones, Democrats, that are sending little children to school in fear of their lives instead of reading and writing and arithmetic. They have to worry about AR-15s. They have to worry about shotguns. They have to worry about being killed, because now, and it's not Democrats doing this, it's the Republican Party. Now they're the ones that are passing crazy legislation that allows the killings of little children to continue, to where now it's the #1 cause of death among children, guns.
I mean, what you're talking about is just what grievance politics that the Rev was discussing hath wrought. And of course, that's not about delivering anything real to the American people. That's just about stoking old hatreds. And that's a sad day, because what we have now is a slate of politicians, most of them in the Republican Party, who are in office not as public servants, but just to stoke grievances. And that shows, you know, even when Ron DeSantis, for example, didn't show up, you know, several weeks ago, when there was really like horrific weather situation. That's just 101 in politics. But these are politicians who actually are more motivated by grievance than they are by public service. And so you see that. I mean, the other thing that you kind of brought up here, raised, Joe, and I think this is interesting, is the advantage that Donald Trump has right now is also that he's not in office. And when you're in office, you get blamed for everything that goes wrong. So despite the fact that he stoked this really sad decline of the Republican Party. And that has kind of ushered in these kind of politicians who are passing these draconian laws on abortion, punishing women, doing nothing about guns. He's actually not having to take the blame for it because he's not in office. So I think that also is giving him an added bump among Republican voters. We shouldn't discount that.
Well, and Rev, another reason they're losing, these Republicans, you have to just say it because it's the truth. And this isn't a knock on Republicans. I'm trying to help them every day understand why they just keep losing. Because the hatred, the victimhood. I mean, we watched a little bit of a certain network over the weekend, Meek and I. You wouldn't believe. I mean, it's like Hunter Biden's laptop. I think the trans influencer beer commercial. And I forget the third thing, but you're sitting there, you're going, are there really people at home going, yes, these are the most important issues in America right now? And you had this unbelievable statistic on Politics Nation about news coverage and pictures of all of these Republicans getting AR-15s. I kid you not, getting AR-15s and shooting up Bud Light beer cans. Acts of violence against beer because of a social media post on Bud Light. What was that? What was that stat? They spent more time covering that than what?
They spent more time covering that than they spent dealing with the issue of the gun shootings that were going on. And I think that we wanted the people to see this was, as you said, an online ad that they were going up against, that they just went through violent acts of shooting up things, and they spent an inordinate amount of time on that rather than the dominant issues that people were dealing with, and that was shootings around the country by accidental incidents, like a 16-year-old kid ringing a doorbell in Kansas City, and then a cheerleader going to the wrong car in another state, and then in upstate New York, someone pulling in the wrong driveway of different races. We focused, of course, on the black kid who was shot by an 84-year-old white man whose great-grandson said he had racism. But then you had a black guy shooting a young white cheerleader for opening his car door, thinking it was her car, and we have to denounce that. They ignored all of that. They are in this bias, bigotry against trans and LGBTQ and blacks. Us against them is what they're being fed, and they're going for it.
It's so, Matt Lewis, you sit back, and it doesn't take long to figure out why Republicans keep losing elections every single year. I mean, why did we used to talk about taxes? Used to talk about spending. We used to talk about regulations. We used to talk about a strong defense. We used to talk about freedom. And now that has been so twisted. And so, somebody in the state of Florida in 2022, somebody in the state of, Virginia, somewhere all across the country, they're going to get like 10, 15 pieces of mail on trans athletes. And I think after the first or second, they're like, okay, we get this. And now this meltdown over a social media post by a trans influencer about Bud Light. They're melting down over that. They're melting down over Hunter Biden's laptop still, okay? What have we said here? If he gets arrested by the FBI, okay, you're not going to see us talking about injustice. We're going to be like, okay, well, I guess he does. That's how the world worked before Donald Trump. If the FBI arrested somebody, you're like, okay, well, I knew him, too bad.
Innocent until proven guilty.
And then you're innocent until proven guilty.
But you cover the news.
But they've twisted it so much. These Republicans are focusing on things that are never going to win them elections. It's just hatred and extremism and extreme positions on abortion, extreme positions on guns, extreme position on social issues that when they go mainstream, they win.